It's wonderful to be with all of you today. My name is Miriam Warren. I'm Yelp's Chief Diversity Officer, and we have such a great panel for you today. If you have been wondering, how do I deal with all of these finances? How can I, get financial strength without sacrificing stability and growth? If you've been wondering about seeking capital, if you already have sought capital and you need some help thinking through that, we are going to talk to three incredible panelists who have a ton of experience and background in this area, so that you can get a chance to develop a finance first approach and make sure that your business practices actually support the growth that you're looking for in your particular business. So I'm going to kind of get out of the way so we can talk to these folks. I'm going to have each of them introduce who they are and what their business is. And I'm going to start with Jennifer. Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you, Miriam. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Glanville Love. I am a brewer and director of partnerships at Boston Beer Company, Samuel Adams. I have been a brewer and working here for this is my 23rd year. And I started 16 years ago in a program that we launched in 2008 called Brewing the American Dream as a brewing coach. And I love this program. And in 2019, I was able to take this program on in my role as director of partnerships. This program over the last 16 years has provided capital and coaching and mentoring to over 15,000 businesses across the country. We have loaned over $100 million, which I know we're going to talk about finance in a little bit and loans. And we've created and retained almost 12,000 jobs. It's really great work. I love making beer. Beer is a lot of fun. It's as much fun as you think it is. But working with these small businesses over the last especially 4 years has been nothing less than inspiring. The challenges that they've faced and continue to face with access to capital. It really inspires me to work with them and help them grow their business. They create these vibrant communities and create jobs. So it's really exciting, and I'm happy to be here to talk about it.
Awesome. So glad to have you, Jennifer. Over to you, Jamaal.
Hi, thanks for having me. Jamaal Brown, VP of Finance here at Justworks. So Justworks, an HR tech company, leveling the playing field for small businesses with a particular focus on payroll, benefits, HR compliance. Prior to working here, I also was head of finance for the advertising division at Roku. And in the prior life, I was doing, my wife and I started a baked goods business actually here in Brooklyn. So excited to be here and share some of my perspective.
So glad to have you here with us, Jamaal. Vincent, bring us home.
Okay. Yeah. Hey. So I guess I could say I'm a kind of an accidental business owner. I started in software sales essentially, and then I met my business partner kind of by accident. I just put an ad on Craigslist for a roommate. He moved in. He was working as a cake decorator for a wedding venue, and he would come home at night and we'd kind of chat over drinks, and he'd show me some of these cakes he was working on. They're like these really elaborate, beautiful cakes. I'd be like, wow, how much does somebody pay for that? He's like, this cake right here is $2,000. I was like, wow, that's quite a bit of money for a single cake for a wedding. He's like, yeah, they could be more than that too. And I go, well, how much are the ingredients for something like that? He was like, I don't know, 25, 50 bucks. And I was like, why don't we go into business together? I was like, that's insane. Let's do this together. I didn't know anything about like owning a business or like the fact that you have to pay rent and marketing and all this kind of stuff. I just saw the cogs and like, great, let's do it. Like that sounds like an insane markup. So we started that together. And he kind of had a dual idea, his whole life, which was this Mexican panaderia with like really high quality ingredients, and then the custom cake side as well. And so we did the custom cake side and we did the Mexican panaderia side, and we called it Cubes Baking Company because we made everything in the shape of little cubes. And it was kind of like a marketing calling card sort of thing. So like if, your office got a bunch of cube cupcakes delivered to them, you'd be like, hey, I know exactly where those are from. So that was kind of our little concept. And I never had designs on it being very big or like, growing beyond just our one store. And I never actually thought I would be that involved either. Like I put up almost all the money. I think it was almost entirely bootstrapped. And then, and we were doing that. We were doing pretty well. We were kind of like, getting on the other end of the J curve and like, starting to turn a profit. And we were moving into our best year ever. And then that's exactly when COVID hit. And literally, almost literally overnight, as they were locking everybody down, calls, emails to the shop. Can we get our wedding deposit back? Can we get our deposit for the cake for the wedding back? Can we get this back? Can we get this back? And so I watched our bank account go from like, a very healthy level to like, I was up at night shaking. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like I can't take over this lease by myself, and I have no money in the bank account. I don't know what we're gonna do. And like kind of in the background of all this, one of the desserts that we had been selling was this individually packaged tres leches slice. And like I wasn't super familiar with tres leches, but I was like, wow, this is really good. We developed this recipe, and Kevin in particular had developed it, and then we've kind of worked on it together over the years, kind of cleaning up the ingredients and stuff like that. And we were just kind of out of interest, we were in one grocery store, a single grocery store, not a chain, just one store. And so at that same time, it was kind of a two-way street where we contacted them and they contacted us, and they're like, hey, could you bring this to all of our stores? We're like, we kind of have to. Like that's really all we can do right now. So I go, let's do a full pivot. Let's go hard in on this one thing. Kevin's like, absolutely, I'm in on that. I want to do it in a bunch of different flavors though. I was like, okay, great, let's do it. And so we did that. And it was like, it was like the spike was just like crazy. Like it was like we made up the revenue, in the next like 6 months, almost easily. So we went from like that one store, and then we were looking 20, then 40, and then 60. And then it was like, and it was all this very organic growth where people would either be moving around to these different stores and bring it on, or just like a very easy sales process through our distributor. But it was like almost like that crisis, I guess, kind of turned into opportunity for us, and that's where we're at now. Sorry, I ran a little bit long, but so I'll talk a lot less as we go through here. But yeah, that's kind of how we started, and it's like I said, it's all been a little bit of an accident, and then just continuing to move and evolve as we go.
I love that, Vincent, because as we were talking about in the green room, most entrepreneurs do not start with an idea that then ends up being their idea 10 years later. Like most businesses are pivoting in a lot of different ways. And I think your example that you just illustrated so eloquently really kind of gives proof to that, which is like, you started with one concept. I love the wedding cake, and feeling really grateful that I eloped. $2,000 seems like a lot for cake.
So did I, actually. Yeah.
Cool.
I didn't have a big wedding cake.
But definitely looking forward to hearing more about that. I feel like to ground us for this particular conversation around finances, Jamaal, I'd love to start with you. Obviously finances are super challenging. Vincent's already given us an example of that, even outside of a COVID time, right? And that's something that I think all entrepreneurs feel, all business owners feel. So you have experience not only at Justworks, but you've also been a small business owner and entrepreneur yourself. Can you share why it's crucial to adopt a finance first mindset right from the start?
Yeah, I think, a common pitfall, one is like oftentimes people don't look at the finances because it can be daunting, right? And I think, Vincent, your example really resonated with me. Like you're staring at the balance, your balance, you're seeing it really high and then dropping. And so, you might be an outlier. I know a lot of people, again, will view the finances as pretty daunting. Even myself, right? Like someone who has a background in finance, when I was working on like the baked goods business, right? The reason you get into it is because you like networking or making products. And so like you're spending your time really focused on what you really are really good at and what you really enjoy. And it's not, you don't want to spend time like, staring at zeros and ones. But I do obviously think it's very important. I think it can be very high level to start, to have some sort of budget, right? It could be very high level back of the napkin math, but it's very important that you're, looking at the inflows and outflows of the business. And actually curious, Vincent, maybe to hear some of your experience with like how you navigated through some of that. But it can be very high level to start. I think it just make sure you find your baseline, right? So you understand kind of some of those high level pieces of the business. And so when things happen, you're able to navigate accordingly and keep a pulse on where things are going. I think two areas where I've seen people potentially get it wrong is both you can overinvest in the business, right? Or underinvest. But you get so nervous about spending that you're not planting the right seeds. And I think having a high level budget helps you to navigate those things.
Yeah,
Really?
I was gonna say, Jamal, actually, you probably had a heart attack when you heard like like I just heard how much the ingredients cost and like, ah, great, it's a viable business. And you're like, and then you ran a bakery business as well. So it's like, oh man, he must think I'm such a fool.
But that's why it's so important, right? You need just like, and it could be very high level, but like you need to make sure you understand those pieces and how it flows through your overall model, because otherwise it'll sneak up on you.
Yeah, and I would say like talk to like any small bit. Like I was so and still am like so willing to just talk to anybody that's like, hey, I have a question, you know, because like I don't want anybody to go through the unless you have a competing product, but I don't want anyone to go through, you know, what we had to go through and be like, no, here's like how hard it is, and here's all the things you have to consider that you'll spend on it. So like, I mean, if you could literally find any small business, I feel like they 9 times out of 10 be willing to just chat with you for
Help you.
5 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. That entrepreneur community is strong indeed. Jennifer, I'm going to bring it over to you. So in your work with the Brewing the American Dream Project, you've been able to give a variety of businesses access to capital. Is there a common thread between the businesses that are ready for capital, or do you have advice for how businesses can prepare themselves financially to take advantage of growth opportunities?
Yeah, I think this is right in line with what we were just talking about, about that mentoring and coaching piece, because you need capital to start your business, but the mentoring, the business advice is what's going to help you grow, right? So I think that's exactly what Vincent was talking about. It's like you're going along and everything's great until it's not, whether your walk-in breaks down or something like that. And we know, you know, there's a large, what's great about the internet is you can get anything on the internet, and you can also get really high interest loans very easily. And we've seen with a lot of our businesses, that's where they really get into trouble because they needed it urgently. And they weren't really thinking about the amount that they took. They weren't thinking about the interest rates because it seems short term. So you really always have to think long term, even in the immediate needs. And so that's where we come in, especially with our programming. You know, we have free coaching and mentoring. So we partner with Axion Opportunity Fund, which is one of the largest micro lenders in the country. They've been with us since the beginning. They do incredible work. I mentioned we've loaned over $107 million since we started the program. And the repayment rate is 4% higher than the average for the country, which is really incredible. And that is because their lenders work very closely with the entrepreneurs to make sure that not only is this the right amount that you need, what are you going to use it for? And then, you know, not to get into something where you have to pay your rent this month, which of course you have to pay your rent that month. But they don't want you to get into a thing where the next month you still have to pay your rent, right? So we really want to work to have them use the capital wisely, make sure they're getting the right loan. Most of the time we find that they're trying to take out more money than they need. So, you know, they can always come back and you can get multiple loans. I know, like, I can see Jamaal and Vincent like, oh yeah, we've been there, right? So it's, so the small businesses really, there's so many ways you can raise capital. So you can do that. You can find a micro lender. Community banks are also a great opportunity, and they'll also provide some of that coaching and mentoring piece too, to make sure that you're taking the right amount of funding and what you're going to use it for. And I do think, again, that long-term strategy is really important to make sure that you're going to be set up for success for growth, because ultimately you're doing this because you're passionate about it, or, you know, you're an aspirational entrepreneur and you got excited and you wanted to start this, but most people don't want it to end right away, right? So you want to think about the long-term strategy.
I think that's such wise advice. Sort of building off of Jennifer's suggestions, Vincent, we heard a little bit about, so we arrive at COVID, and then you see like the bank balance dropping, but then you get this like burst of energy as these tres leches is like suddenly taking off all over the place. You got lots and lots of places and outlets that are selling it. How did you decide to completely pivot? And can you share how you identified the need to focus your model specifically on tres leches, and how sort of following the numbers helped you to evolve into the current business model that you have?
Yeah. Okay. So how do we decide to pivot? I'd say half of it was we were kind of compelled, and half of it was kind of I always had the seed in my mind. You know, like I said, I worked in software sales and worked for like a pretty small business, and you know, was pretty instrumental there and like hands-on and all stages of the organization, and like, but I always had and it worked in food business for a long time too, like since I was like 16. And so I always had this idea of like a restaurant or food cart or something that just did one thing really well, just like exceptionally well. Just do that one thing, but do it exceptionally well, blow it out. Because there's so many generalists where you go into like Cheesecake Factory and you can get like 450 different items. It's like, can they all be good? I don't know, maybe. But
I love Cheesecake Factory.
okay, well, I'm not insulting it. I'm just saying, like, that probably takes a lot of money. Like, but if you're like a smaller guy like us, just do one thing exceptionally, just get that nailed down. And then so that was always kind of in my mind. And then it was like, okay, this gives me kind of the opportunity to do that. And then also there's a desire for it, there's a need for it. So like there was a big push during COVID to have like small, individually portioned, grab and go items from grocery stores. Like they absolutely needed that. It's like, wow, we were already doing that. So it's like, go full tilt into that. And, and then with doing that one thing, obviously you get these economies of scale. So you can, order, we were ordering these little clamshell containers, like maybe 200 at a time. And now we're ordering them 4,000 at a time, so it's paying like 50 cents per container down to like 17 cents. And you can get them cheaper than that if you do even more than that. So like, all those things, taking those prices down, then we can obviously pass that off to people, which was a huge concern. People didn't know if they were going to lose their jobs or whatever, and they want just like a little sweet treat escape. So yeah, so that's all to say is like, it was something I kind of always thought about, kind of wanted to do. This gave me a chance to do it. And then, there was like PPP money and stuff like that came out. So like going to the finance side, I knew we had to retool our kitchen because we had been built like kind of a traditional, like dine-in, like restaurant, cafe, or whatever. So it was like a very small kitchen, and the bulk of it was like seating and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, if we're gonna try to do a lot more production, and we're only selling one product, like first of all, people aren't dining in right now. We don't know how long they're not going to be dining in, and like we're going to need a much bigger kitchen. We're going to need freezer space too, because we got to freeze these products. So I was like, we got to totally do that. So we took as much money as they would give us, which was very little because we were super responsible at the very beginning of the pandemic. And we were like, people were kind of, like leaving or going to other jobs, and we weren't rehiring because we were like, we don't know how this is going to turn out. We lost all of our clients, but if we would have kept everyone on board, then we got a lot more PPP money. But anyway, we took as much as we possibly could, like I said, which was very little, and use that to just reinvest back into the business and build out, a kitchen that was equipped to do what we needed to do. And, then we were like full in, we were committed. So like, if the pandemic lasts another 6 months, like whatever, this is what we're doing now. If it keeps going on, okay, like, hopefully this will keep going on the same way. Not sure if you had any other questions, but that's kind of where all the thinking was, and like that's where the finance came in, and the financing allowed us also some of the breathing room, for the month we had to be shut down to do that construction, because you can't, your bills are still coming due, your vendors still need their money, so that was super helpful, and like turned around right away, was profitable.
And what I love about that, Vincent, is I feel that dreaded P word, pivot, but with so many businesses we heard from, and we focus on food, beverage, and breweries, that pivot, that change that happened over the last couple of years, it allowed them to do something that they were like, I don't know if I was going to do that, or that was my favorite thing and I wanted to do it. So having the capital to be able to do that R&D or take that risk. I mean, I love when I have business owners and they're like, I didn't know if I wanted to do it and take that risk. I'm like, you already took the risk. You started a business, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, our founder, Jim Cook, will always say, he's like, it is so intense. There is nothing more intense than starting your own business. You're the chief everything officer, right? And you have to make all these decisions. So I think making sure let's pray there's no more pandemic that makes us change things, but providing that you have the capital or the financial security to actually do some R&D or some market research, because there's opportunities where your whole business could change direction and that growth could then skyrocket with something that maybe you didn't have the time to do, because that's the other piece, having that financial security to make sure you have the time to do that.
That's such a great point. And like I was thinking about that as I was reading through the list of questions, and it's literally true. It's like a, an idiom or whatever, but time is money. It's literally true. Money is time too. So like having that money to like pause and take a break, because we're just going, like I said, it was bootstrap. So we're going, full tilt. Every decision has to be like instantaneous, instead of like giving ourselves a little bit of running, giving ourselves a little bit of extra capital to like take a break, take a step back, go to the test kitchen, you evaluate vendors and suppliers, and go meet them on the floor, and go look at other ways of producing, like because we do it in a very inefficient way right now, and there are more efficient ways to do it. And it's like if we took a little bit more time, we could have done that from the beginning instead of realizing after we built the kitchen a certain way that we could have done it, this way. So like so I'm so glad that you mentioned that, like the money just giving you time. And
Yeah, that runway seems like it's really important.
But I also want to say, like, you can't know everything until you're in it either. Like you have to jump into the paper bag to escape the paper bag. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't you have to get in the forest to get out of it. Like it's not like you can't just see the path without just being completely lost. I don't know. I'm saying all these like ridiculous things, but I'm just trying to like make a point here. Is like you don't know it until you're in there, and so you kind of do have to just go in sometimes without 100% knowledge, and that's hard for a lot of people, and it definitely is for
Yeah. Jamaal, coming back to you, we all know that getting capital is really only the first step. So actually knowing how to leverage your business so that you can grow it is a completely different thing. We know that there's lots of people on the call with a whole assortment of different types of businesses. We know that they're all really different. But can you give us some sort of general guidance about how businesses can strategically manage their capital so that they can both, deal with these immediate needs that that obviously we're hearing about from Vincent, but also sort of that long-term growth?
Yeah, I think you hear both Vincent and Jennifer talking about it, and again, kind of going back to my earlier point around, maintaining that budget, right? Even if it is pretty high level. I've been probably a decade and a half or so working in finance, and I think what I tend to see are, I guess, two things. One, people not giving themselves the runway, right? To your point, to be able to navigate the unknown, and also just being thoughtful about looking around the corner around like risk and opportunities that you may not have thought about, right? So you always need to make sure you're nimble and right, you kind of can plan for that within your budget. And again, I think some of this may feel daunting, but like look at your try to plan for your North Star. What is your goal in the next 3 to 5 years, right? And like what are some of the unexpected things you want to make sure you have capacity to do in the future, and build that into your budget. So again, you're nimble, right? And you can kind of navigate these things as they come about. One of the things that we'll do here is we'll take a scenario-based approach to how we forecast. And so, we always have our target scenario, but we're always thinking about like worst case and best case scenarios. And then COVID is never going to be on your list, right? So there's things like that'll pop up. But we're trying to be prepared for a number of different scenarios, and we're looking at different levers and say, hey, if this is moving slower than we had thought, can we pull back here? Or this is going better than we thought, can we speed up here? And so just making sure you're doing that so you can, again, be nimble. And then last, I'll say, I'll be remiss not to say, finding great partners, right? So accountants, lawyers, back office folks such as Justworks. We have the luxury of work with a number of small businesses, so we see a number of different things. So allow you to help navigate some of these things that you're trying to do, I think is also very critical.
A great reminder, Jamaal, you do not have to do all of this alone. You can get support in the form of partnership. Appreciate that. Jennifer, in your experience, how do financial decisions impact the long-term sustainability of a business, especially in the brewing industry?
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit before, and I think Jamaal hit on it too. Like, what's that? If you think about your long-term strategy, we talked about for your business, but also think about your long-term commitments. So, some of the challenges we see with some of our businesses that don't have that financial security or that financial understanding is that they're committing, they get excited, they get an order from a new supplier, a new retailer, and they didn't check what the payment terms were, right? So you don't get paid in time in order to produce inventory to then sell either back to that retailer or to another customer. So you really want to think about that. And that's something we've experienced in brewing is when you commit to a customer or retailer, and then you can't deliver, that could be the end of your relationship. And the great news is today more than ever, people are hyper aware of small business and want to support small business. And we love that. The problem is there's so many small businesses, you could be left out if you severed that time because you couldn't commit and they've moved on to somebody else. So the shelf space is very competitive. So you really want to make sure that your margins, you're not operating on too slim a margin, right? That that really doesn't leave you that much room for error. You can think about how you allocate your profit. So maybe that is again for inventory or things like that. And just making sure that you're continuing to grow those relationships, because you're selling based on your product, but people do want to buy based on a relationship too, and know your business. So I think that's a real opportunity for folks to make sure that they have that security and think strategically around where they're putting their money longer term with those commitments.
Yeah, really, really good advice. I'm coming back to you, Vincent. As you hear some of that advice from Jennifer, does any of that sort of sound like some of the things that the Lecheria had to deal with?
Yeah, well, I was just kind of laughing because I was
Yeah.
like, everything that Jamaal and Jennifer said, they're like, make sure you don't do this. I was like, yeah, we did all of that like badly. But if you do it small enough, you can do it many times. Like if you make enough small failures, it's okay, as long as you get some of the bigger wins. But no, she's like so 100% right, and I wish she was my business coach like a few years ago, because it's like you can get into these relationships and you can get really excited, and like there was a point during the pandemic too where a Costco reached out to us, and thank God we had like a good mentor. It wasn't even a mentor, actually didn't even really like us that much, but he was like he was like, I actually worked with Costco and they almost bankrupted my business because, like I could not that it's a bad company. I'm not like disparaging Costco at all. Like I like Costco a lot, but like you have to like hit a certain scale and you have to have enough margin, like you said, Jennifer, and just like, excess capital, like, because they're going to send products back. Like, they have a good return policy, and I'm sure that goes back to the, the supplier and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. It's like that's fine how they run their business, but you need to be ready for that. If you think, oh great, I'm getting this multi-million-dollar account, and you like go all in on that account, and then you don't have any money to like back it up, your best dream will be your worst nightmare, like super quick. So yeah, like that advice is just 100% spot on. And like, I mean, for businesses my size, I would just say like I don't know, super conservative growth. And I kind of wanted to pose a question to Jennifer and Jamaal, because I guess what would like, you've kind of been describing it as we've been going through here, but the general mindset of like a larger, more well-established, more sophisticated, entrepreneur or investor or business owner versus like a small-time guy, and like how they will look at like, let's just say an investment of like $5 million or something like that. Like, because I think like Jamaal, what you're saying is like, we'll hit these high-level notes and then go down here, and it's, and I think that's probably how they would do it. And I think we maybe just kind of hit the high level and then we're like, okay, let's go with that. But I was like, I guess I'm just wondering, like in your experience, like how would they do it better, than someone in my position? And I don't take offense at all. Like I'm obviously here disparaging myself all day.
No, but I think you've done the right things by listening to again, that capital is critical, but as equally as critical is the mentoring advice around capital and what you're doing amongst all the other things you can do. And you said it, like you don't know it till you're in it. That's where all these resources can come in. I mean, programs like ours, utilizing Justworks, you can utilize the SBA around the country. They offer a lot of free seminars. There's a lot of free seminars and opportunities around getting capital, whether it's working capital, small business lines of credit, small business loans, and really arming yourself with all the information around the different types of capital will really help you. And I think you said it exactly, time. The number one thing I hear from people is like, oh, I was going to reach out, but I just didn't have any time. And then once they have the mentoring session or they attend something or they look into something, they're like, why didn't I do that like 9 months ago? Right. And you both, everybody, we all do that in our lives anyways, but it's almost impossible to make the time as a small business owner. but that is critical. And I think understanding the financial security, you don't have to be an expert. That's where the mentors like Jamaal can come in and our program, but you should have a baseline knowledge, especially of your business, like your cost of goods, what's it costing you, your products, you know exactly how much those clamshell openers are. That's exactly what you need to know.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. I say my approach to like a small business or a large business is exactly the same. Like, do you understand your business? Do you understand the cost of some of those key things? I've never seen a budget or a model come true, but it's really more like, are you thoughtful? Have you really been, do you understand your business? Do you understand the levers? And like, how do we understand like whether or not you're having success or not? I think is where the key pieces are.
Thank you
And
all
just
so
to,
much.
oh, sorry.
Amazingly,
You're done.
yeah, we are out of time. We are 1 minute over, so I'm going to wrap us up. Jennifer, Jamaal, Vincent, thank you so much for being with us today. So much good insight. I know we could talk for another hour, but Emily won't let us. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. This was such an edifying session. So really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having
Awesome.
us.
Thank you.